Hey guys, welcome back to Wheelin' with Wally. I have a totally different style of video for you today. I'm going to be doing some woodwork here in my shop, and I'm going to be making some cutting boards and charcuterie boards out of some walnut planks I have here. And I'm doing this because my Jeep's going to be in the Dayton Off-Road Expo in February of 2024. And part of that is if you donate to the raffle, you can have your emblem on the shirt. So I'm going to be making these to donate to the raffle. And also be sure to come out and see me in February. So I did a little bit of woodworking for about a year or two before I got my Jeep and kind of really dove into that kind of lifestyle. And it was before I made the YouTube channel, so you guys have never seen me do anything like this. I'm not particularly good at it, but I have a lot of expensive tools I bought before that, so it makes me look a little bit better than I am. So I'm kind of excited to show you a different style of video and just something else I kind of enjoy. So the first step in making this board, other than getting the lumber, is kind of picking a design. I just looked on Google and Instagram, found a couple of boards I kind of liked, and then just hand drew a few sketches on these boards. And now basically I just have to take it to the bandsaw and cut it out pretty close to my line before I start to refine the board. So I've got two walnut planks this size. On this plank, I've drawn two smaller boards. So I'm going to cut this in half and then cut those two boards out. On the other plank, I'm making a much longer board. It's almost the full length of the board. So I'll do that one in a minute. So my camera died on that one, but here's the rough outline of the board. So now I'm going to move on to doing the other one. So this one's fairly simple. Got a little bit of a handle here. It's mostly straight with a few curves to give it a little bit of character. This board I really like. This is kind of, I don't know, it almost has like a cleaver shape to it. I've got a cool little handle here. I've got some waves in the board going down. Fairly simple. I really like this one. And then this one is going to be the full length board. I have a really long handle here. I've got some good sweeping curves in it. And then I'm keeping the live edge on this one to give it a little more character. So this one should turn out pretty cool too. Another thing I'm going to do while I'm building these that I kind of thought about doing in the past but never actually did is I really like the shape of these boards. So I think I might want to make more in the future. And a cool way to do that is to actually create a template of the board so you can very quickly kind of recreate the board in the future. So I bought this sheet of plexiglass here. You can start actually making the shape on the plexiglass to make the template. I had already drawn them on the boards before I thought about doing this, so I went ahead and cut the boards out. So once I get them cut into shape and get the handles cut out, I'm going to stick them on top of the plexiglass and trace them out, and then I'm going to cut the plexiglass to the same form as the board so I get that template. And then in the future I can just put this template on top of a board, kind of use some double-sided tape to hold it down, and then I can really rough cut it out on the bandsaw, and then I can take it over to my router table and use a flush cut bit and keep the guide on the template up here and just really quickly recreate that board with a pretty smooth cut. I got this cool table that my dad gave me for Christmas a couple years ago, and it has clamps that you can just stick into the table. So I have the board clamped down right here. I'm going to take this 1-inch paddle bit and I'm just going to drill out the hole for the handle, and then I'll clean it up later. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these other two out off camera. So just hunking out big chunks of the wood here will save you tons of time later just cleaning up these holes. So the more you can get out, the better. So now I'm just going to take my jigsaw with a wood blade. I'm going to go in the hole I drilled and then cut out the rest of the wood into the shape I drew on the board. So I'm definitely going to have to do a little shaping while I'm sanding this. It's not the perfect kind of teardrop I was going for, but it's pretty close, and it's way less work this way. If you were just going to try and sand or use a rasp on this, this saves you a lot of time. Here's a quick look at the boards. Pretty rough cut, kind of got the handle shape, got the holes in them. This one is definitely, I think, my favorite so far. Let me know down in the comments which one you like the best. This one's pretty simple, but also just pretty practical. It's just going to be a simple board. It's going to look really good once I finish it though. And then this one is going to be awesome. This is a big board. This will be great for parties and just putting a lot of food on here and serving it up to guests. It's going to look really awesome. I like the live edge on it. That's going to look really good too. I've made 2 other really big boards like this in the past, but that was long before my YouTube channel, so you guys didn't get to see anything like that. And while I'm at it, if you guys aren't subscribed and you're watching this channel, it's predominantly a Jeep and off-roading channel. Hopefully that will appeal to you, but I think if you guys really like this video, let me know down in the comments and I'll do more stuff like this in the future too. So now that I've got them pretty rough cut out, I'm going to take it over here to my belt sander and I'm going to kind of get the final profile of what I want and clean up the edges a little bit, and then I can take it over there and use that acrylic to make a template. So all I'm doing now is taking this rasp and getting into these really tight bends in the handle that I couldn't get with my sander. I did order some attachments for a drill that are basically just little sander drums that I can get in here and clean up with later, so that'll make the finish work a little easier. I just don't have them yet, so I'm hitting it with the rasp. Basically all I'm doing is knocking down the really rough sawn edges from when I cut it out. I'm gonna come back later and sand all this and get it a nice finish. This is gonna leave it pretty rough for now. I've got the boards about 95% to the shape I want them to be at, so that's pretty good for the templates. So I'm going to put them on this acrylic now and draw an outline around the boards, and then I can cut that shape out of the acrylic, and then I'll have the templates and I can easily remake these boards in the future. One thing about using the acrylic, because you could really make a template out of anything, but using this thinner plastic acrylic, it's light, it's easy to store, but it's also clear. So in the future, I can take the template and set it on top of a board, and you can really see what the board will look like because you can see through the acrylic template, so you can really set it on the board and pick out where it looks best to cut it out. And then with this bigger board over here, I don't really have a piece long enough, nor do I need it. So basically what I'm going to do is on the extra over here, I'm going to set the handle up there and probably to about here, and then I will just cut out that section because the handle on this longer board is really all of the work. So I'll be able to just really easily copy that handle onto other boards in the future. So I went ahead and did this one real quick without showing you the setup on camera as kind of a proof of concept. I'd never really done it before, and I never used one of these flush trim router bits. So I wanted to make sure it would work well before I filmed it. And it actually worked great. It worked way better than it was cutting on the bandsaw. It came out really smooth. Here it is. I took the plastic off. You can see how clear it is. You can see how you can see the grain through there really easily, so it's really nice to be able to set these up in different positions on the wood and find out what would look the best. So I got some double-sided tape. I got the Gorilla double-sided tape. I think it's way too strong for what I need. Maybe just some double-sided Scotch tape or something would have been a little better. All I'm gonna do is take a little bit of this, stick it on here, and then I can start to take it to the flush trim bit and clean it all up and get it to shape. Now that I've got the back of all the tape peeled off, I'm going to take the template, kind of line it up so there's plastic kind of hanging over every edge, and making sure this hole is in that handle. That way I can get the router bit in there. Then I'm just going to press firmly around the tape for a minute to make sure it kind of sticks really good to the plastic and the wood. On the flush trim router bit, you have a little bearing that basically your guide or your template will run along, and then the cutter is below the bearing in line with the blades. As long as whatever you're using as a template is on top and whatever you're cutting is in the blade area, it'll perfectly give you a nice smooth cut all along there. So I'm making sure the wood is on the bearing and then the plastic is on the bottom and the cutting blade. So always make sure you're wearing a dust mask. I'm not that great about this, but I try to when I remember. So now that I've got the profile of the outside of the board cut out, all I'm gonna do is take that hole I drilled in the handle, set it over the bit, kind of make sure it's not touching the bit, and then I'll start the machine back up while kind of keep my hands on the board, and I'll just cut out the inside of that. So I'm gonna put my mask back on and do that. So now I've got that cut out really well. The only thing you won't be able to do great with these flush cut router bits like that is to get like this kind of teardrop shape in there. It does really well with kind of small circles, but you can't get sharp edges like that. So if I want to recreate that, I'd have to just kind of sand it out or use a file on every board to make that deeper cut down there. So be extra careful around the handle or anywhere where the plastic is really thin because you don't want to break that. But there you go, it popped off. So I'll just peel the tape off of this, which it actually comes off fairly easy without leaving any residue. That is the only redeeming thing about this tape right now. And here's a look at the template. It is exactly like the board. The only thing, like I said, is this area down here is not as deeply cut, but I expected that. And everything else looks great. So now that the boards are all cut out and the acrylic templates are made, I got this drum sanding sleeve kit that I bought. And it comes with a bunch of different grits of sandpaper and a bunch of different sizes of these little drums that you can put the sandpaper on and a drill attachment. Now I'm gonna go through here and I'm gonna kind of roughly shape out the handle. I wanna round it over really good. It'll help me get into here to sand better. I'll still finish sand it all by hand, but I'm just gonna get the rough shape and kind of really start to knock this down on these sharp edges. So I've got the handle kind of smoothed out a little bit better and shaped up, kind of rounded off the neck here and kind of just cleaned up the inside and got all the saw marks out of the sides and then all the burn marks from when it was on the saw or the router table. And I'm not going for a perfectly clean look on this one. Since it's the live edge board, I'm going to kind of leave it a little rougher, so not perfect circles or anything like that. There's going to be a few bumps here and there. So I don't know, it just kind of gives it a little more rustic of an appearance. Kind of looking the board here, got some of these hits and little soft wood here and there in the center of the board. I'm going to clean that out with my chisel, and I don't have it today, so this is going to have to wait to finish it, but I'm going to clean this out and I'm going to fill it with some starbond, which is basically a super glue, or I think it is a super glue, but it's black finish and it's a thicker glue. So I'm going to pour that in there and hit it with a spray activator and then sand it flat. I don't want to dig too deep into the wood here. I just want to clean out dead spot in the center here, and then I can fill it. Now, one thing with the glue or epoxies, I'm not using epoxy on this, but it kind of stands true for that as well, is if you put those on the boards, you don't really want to market them as a cutting board because the knife will remove that plastic, either the glue or the epoxy, and that's not really food safe to ingest anyway. It's food contact safe once it's cured, so it's fine to call it a charcuterie board or a serving board, but you could technically still use this as a cutting board, but you'd want to do it in spots where I haven't added that. So just be aware of that if you are going to make one of these for yourself or someone else. When you're dealing with a live edge board, they look really nice, but the edges will have a lot of kind of dead bark and stuff on them, and the wood could be dead as well. So you're gonna wanna clean some of that up just to keep it from falling off either in someone's sink or kitchen table or wherever they're doing with it. It's nice to get rid of that kind of stuff. I've used chisels in the past to kind of clean it up like that. That helps. This is really soft wood on the edge, so you don't really want that left. You can use kind of little pole saws and stuff to clean it up a little bit at a time. I'm gonna try a wire wheel today. I've not really done this before. I'm gonna see how that works. I think I got rid of most of, if not all of, the really soft edge wood. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So now I'm just gonna flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. So my black starbond glue came in the mail today, so I can fill these voids. It comes with a bunch of these little tiny applicators to get in really tight areas, and then it comes with 2 of these bigger ends. I don't have a whole lot of time. It's Thanksgiving today, so I'm in between dinners with 2 families. So I'm just gonna put the glue on here and let it dry, and then I'll be back later to actually start sanding the boards. So I'm gonna take one of these fine applicator tips and stick it over this end, and that'll let me get into all these tiny little holes. What I like to do with more live edges like this, or stuff you don't want to really sand flat, is take these little sanding block sponges, and they come with sanding grit on them originally, but obviously like sandpaper that'll wear down eventually. So I keep the sponges and I like to wrap just sandpaper around them, and it kind of conforms easier to the edge and has less hard edges itself, so it won't just flatten everything out, but it'll still sand it, so you can kind of squish it on there and it'll start to smooth in the grooves without totally getting rid of all the grooves. So I'm going to start with 80 grit, sand the edges and everything smooth. I'll slightly round the corners and points on this a little bit with the sandpaper as well. After that, I'm probably going to round this handle neck over a little bit more. I have some small belts for a belt sander that I can just kind of use. When you use kind of a strap or belt like that, you can really kind of round things out a lot easier. It's hard to round things with a solid square block or whatever you're sanding with. So just using that belt, you can just kind of naturally round it. So I'll stick you guys on a sanding time lapse. Most of this is going to be boring and it's going to take a while. So this way I can listen to music and it won't take all day for you in the video. So I've got the edges nice and smoothed up, got the corners kind of rounded over so they're not too sharp. And then I really spent some time shaping up the handle. I kind of rounded the neck really good and the actual handle part itself, so it feels really good in the hand. And now I'm ready to, I think, start sanding the board. So I'm just gonna grab my orbital sander here, and I'm gonna start at 80 grit, and I'm gonna work my way up the grits, probably up to about 320. This is a serving board. I'm not gonna make it too fancy. It doesn't have to be as smooth as glass. And again, this isn't a very exciting step, so I'm probably just going to put you guys back on a time lapse so I can listen to music. This is going to take a little while. So I sanded both the flat surfaces of the board up to 320 grit, and it came out really nice. So now what I'm doing is taking just some sandpaper, wrapping it around this sand block, and I'm just doing the edges and doing in the handle. I'm cutting some strips of sandpaper so I can kind of really get in there and clean up the handle and get it smooth too. So now I have everything sanded up to 320 grit. The handle's not perfect, but that's not a big deal because we're gonna have to pretty much resand everything anyway. So with serving boards or charcuterie boards, things that are gonna get wet or damp that are wood, you'll want to sand everything really smooth like I just did, and then you'll want to take water and get the board wet, and that will kind of saturate and raise the grain up, and then the whole board will feel rough again. So if you let that water kind of soak in for a little bit, get it all dried off, that grain will be all bumpy, you'll feel the grain all raised up. Then you re-sand it, and that'll get the board really smooth. And then in the future, when it gets wet again, it won't get all bumpy like that. It'll stay smooth. I've got a squirt bottle with water in it, and I'm gonna spray the whole board down, kind of saturate it real good. There's kind of a rough look at what the board will look like once I finish it. I think it looks pretty sharp. Handle looks good. Now I can feel all the grain. You can probably see it a little bit too. It is a lot bumpier now, and that's fine. I'm gonna let it soak in for a few more minutes, and then I'll start to sand it off after the board kind of dries out a little bit. So now that the grain's all raised from getting it wet, I'm gonna re-sand the whole board just like I did before, up to 320 grit. It's gonna be a lot of fine work kind of in this handle and around it. So I'm not gonna bother filming this. I'm just gonna kind of listen to some music and sand it down, but you're not missing much. It's just gonna be a lot of boring sanding. Okay, so I've got the sanding all done now. It feels really smooth to the touch, so I'm almost ready to put the finish on there. But before I put the finish on, I have a brand so I can kind of burn a logo into the wood. I had this brand made a couple years ago when I was doing this a lot more. I'm still gonna use this because I think it's cool, and even though I don't really do a whole lot of this anymore, the brand still looks decent, so I'm gonna burn it on right here in the bottom right corner, and I guess I just have to heat this up now. So after you have the brand nice and hot, you'll want to do a couple test burns. It's been a while for me, so I might have to do a few. I still might mess it up. All right, it's cooling down. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go for it. We'll see what happens. Oh, and I totally fucked it up. Okay, so I kind of saved it. It's not great. So I'm gonna lightly sand this real quick and see if it comes out any better. If not, I might have to sand it all off and redo it. So normally I would just sand that out and redo it because it's kind of messed up, but because I put some of it in this edge wood here, it really burnt down really easily, so it's pretty deep, so I don't feel like trying to sand that smooth. It'd probably kind of put a little bowl in it right there. I'm just gonna go ahead and finish the board. That's good enough. So I'll be finishing this board in walrus oil. It's cutting board oil, and then after this dries, I'll put some cutting board wax on there. Okay, so now I'm gonna let this sit for at least 12 hours to soak in. If I notice a little bit before that it has absorbed most of the oil, then I'll add some more on there and then just let it sit a few more hours after that. So I'm just gonna prop it up so air can get above and below the board, and I'm gonna leave it here for the night. So it's the next day. It looks like all the oil is soaked into the board. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it down to get any extra residue off. So now that the board is oiled, dried, and wiped down, I'm gonna put on a wood wax. This will just kind of help seal the board, give it a little extra layer of protection, and it's 100% food grade. Get some big chunks of wax. I'm just gonna rub it on and wipe it in. So now I've got the board all waxed up. You can kind of see all the wax on top. I'll wait about 15-20 minutes and then I'll come back and kind of buff it all off. Wax isn't like a permanent finish though. It's one that needs reapplied every so often. It's not like a polyurethane where it hardens and it's on there forever. And that is 100% food grade finish. So once I buff this off, this board should be all done. So now I'm just going to use this clean white rag and I'm going to buff all the wax off the entire board. If you had like a buffing wheel or something, that might make it quicker on the big flat areas. I'm just going to use the rag. All right, so that is the big live edge board finished. Really like how this thing came out. This will be the third one of these I've made. I've kept none of them. I kind of want to keep this one, but I need it for my raffle donation. This thing looks awesome. Really love the handle. Feels great in the hand. This thing's so smooth now. I don't know, I really love it. Here's kind of a look at the live edge of it. Came out really nice. I'm really happy with how this board cleaned up. This is that starbond. You will notice a little bit over here on the edge wood where it's a lot lighter. It does kind of bleed out into the edge wood some, but in the darker walnut area, it just stays right where you pour it. So that's one done. Time to move on and finish the other two. I just worked on the handle and kind of smoothing out some of these curves a little bit with my drill and sandpaper. Now I'm going to take it to the router table. I'm going to use a round over bit to clean up the edges and just kind of round them over. It'll give it a good look. And once I do that, I can start to sand and finish the board. I'm gonna see you guys on a time lapse for some of this. Sanding part is really boring and there's nothing super technical about it. If anything pops up in my head, I will put it in the video, but mostly I'm just gonna jam up to some music and sand it down. So now I've got the board sanded up to 320 grit. I'm gonna raise the grain by wetting the board. I'm just gonna let this absorb for a few minutes, and I think I have this thing all the way sanded now. I sanded it up to 320 grit, then I got it wet, raised the grain, and then resanded it all the way up to 320 grit again. So I think I'm ready to go ahead and put my brand on, and then I'll probably lightly sand around the brand again just to kind of clean up any rough feeling from burning the wood. And after that, I'm ready to put the finish on. So I'm gonna go ahead and heat up the brand. All right, this is always nerve-wracking because I usually mess these up. Came out pretty good. I ate a bunch of smoke. And here's how it came out. Not bad. I can lightly sand that and kind of get some of the detail in there a little better, and then obviously clean up all this ugly burning around the edge. Another thing I want to toss in here is that it's easy to get discouraged, especially when you're starting new things. I still don't think I'm very good at this, but I am 100 times better than what I used to be. So if you're having trouble with this, don't get discouraged. Get after it and don't be too hard on yourself, guys. So on the big board, you guys saw me wipe on that walrus oil, but on smaller boards, I have a tote filled with mineral oil, and I like to put the boards in there and give them a mineral oil bath overnight, and that really helps impregnate the wood with that oil, gets it kind of richer, darker, and the oil kind of lasts longer in the board. I thought this one was gonna fit. Sadly, it's just a little too big, but let's go ahead and start oiling this up, and you can really see what it'll look like. I didn't film much of this board, but it's the same thing you've already seen. It's just a ton of sanding. So now I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in here, and this one will actually fit, so it'll look a little better. I'll just let this soak overnight, and then tomorrow I can wax all the boards and be done. Here are the two smaller boards I finished. They both look really good. I'm pretty happy with how they came out, and I did a lot better sticking that brand on these two than I did the big one. It had been quite a while since I had done one. Probably should have practiced a little bit, but I really didn't. So these two boards came out great, and I've got them oiled now. They soaked in oil for about a day each, and now I'm just gonna apply the wood wax. So this is Walrus Oil brand wood wax. This will help kind of protect the board and give it a much more resilient finish. So I like to take some big globs out of here and really kind of work it into the pores of the wood. And then you wait about 15 minutes and you will buff it off, and it'll give you just a really good finish. time of filming this video, I am about 10 subscribers away from 1,600 subscribers. So I really appreciate everyone who's watching this who's already subscribed. If you guys aren't subscribed, please think about subscribing. I'm getting really close to my goal of 2,000 subscribers. I was hoping to hit that by the end of this year, but as it's already like December 13th right now, I don't think that's gonna happen. And that's probably my own fault for taking the last couple months off from uploading videos, but there's always next year. So if you enjoy this video or any of my other videos and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Now this board's all waxed up. I'm gonna set it off to the side for about 15 minutes from now, and probably just enough time to wax this one up and wait about 5 minutes, and then I can start to buff that one, and when I'm done buffing it, I'll buff this one. If you guys are subscribed to my channel, I assume you are into off-roading and Jeeps. Tell me what other hobbies you have down in the comments. I obviously like to do some woodworking on the side. It's fun. I just don't have the time for it that I used to have, which is kind of sad, but you know, that's life. You get old, you get busy. So now I'm just gonna take this rag and start buffing off the wax. So this is gonna take a minute. Let's go ahead and speed this up. So here's a look at all three of the boards finished. They came out great. I am very happy with these. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the whole reason I made these boards is they are raffle prizes for the Dayton Off-Road Expo. My Jeep will be in the Expo this coming year. It's February 24th and 25th in Wilmington, Ohio. So please come out and see me, see the Jeep, and get a chance to win these as raffle prizes. So thanks for watching, guys. I will see you on the next one.